on your podcast the other day. He brought up the Shroud of Turin.
Yeah.
And I always thought that was fake. Because like in the 80s.
What is that, Eddie?
The shroud, it's like the cloth that Jesus was buried in and left an image of him.
Uh-huh.
And in the 80s, like 1988, they did carbon dating on it. And they go, oh, it's fake. See that?
Yeah, it literally has
never,
the image of Jesus
Yeah,
burned into it somehow or another.
I never looked into it. I just figured it was fake. But listening to you and Mel Gibson talk about it, I'm like,
it's
what?
real?
Is there a...
Well, apparently it's a lot older than they assumed when they did the first testing. And one of the problems is
Holy
that there's
shit.
cross-contamination. There's also been repairs to it. But they did subsequent testing, and they found that it was like 2,000 plus years old.
Yeah, and the one thing, it's the most studied artifact ever.
Damn.
Like particle physicists, nuclear engineers, they all studied it, and some of them, some believe in it, some don't believe in it, but they all agree on one thing: no one knows how they did it.
Right.
There's
no one knows
paint,
how they made it.
There's no paint. There's no dye. So, dude, all this week, all day, I'm just watching documentary after podcast on this shit, and it's fucking mind blowing.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
It's mind blowing.
If it turns out that they can't figure out how anyone could ever do it, like if no one has come up with a theory of how to do that today, that's where it gets really interesting. Because it wasn't paint and it wasn't dye and
they all agree on that.
Wasn't burned.
They all
in.
agree it's a mystery. But then the skeptics say just because we don't know how it was done doesn't make it real, which is a good point. But then the other side's like, dude, all these scientists have no idea how they faked it. It's got to be real. So it's all about how you look at it.
I lean on the side be real.
There's a nuclear engineer.
Well, that'll be the most fun.
There's a nuclear engineer. You can go on YouTube. His name is Robert Rucker. Watch his breakdown. This guy's a nuclear dude. He's breaking down the it's insane because it's a negative image on a non-photographic material. It's linen.
Right.
And then it turns out, like if you look at it with the naked eye, it's white, and then you see the image of the face is kind of like yellow. You can barely see it. But in like 1898, some photographer took a picture of it and then looked at the negative, and then all of a sudden in the negative, the whole body appears, front and back, because he was buried like with a.
You see the images, Jamie?
He was buried with the sheet under him, and it went around his head. That's the back of him, because
the right one's the back and the left one's the front. That's crazy.
No one knows how they did it.
And it even has, like,
scientist.
the holes where the wrist would be nailed.
Yeah, it's fucking crazy. That was the thing with Jesus. With me, it's very hard. It was always very hard to believe in Jesus. I'm like, dude, the resurrection, like that's a hard one to wrap your brain around, right? I could believe that he existed. I could believe that he got crucified. A lot of people got crucified, but the resurrection was always the thing that kept me from really believing in Jesus. I'm like, there's no way the resurrection was real.
But even if this is real, Eddie, it doesn't mean he was resurrected, right? It just means he was crucified and he was the actual real man.
No, the thing is how the image got on. The people that believe that it's real believe that when he was resurrected, some kind of ultraviolet radiation, some kind of burst made that image. That's because that image has never been on any other shroud. People get buried in shrouds all the time. There's never an image like that.
Pretty crazy.
And the crazy thing is the blood, there's no image under the blood. So the blood was there first, and then the image is after. It's crazy shit. Dude, I'm like, I went deep down a rabbit hole all week just watching the skeptics, the scientists, particle physicists. They have no idea how the fuck that image got on the front and back, the back of them too.
How do you perceive that force? Is it just energy, or do you anthropomorphize it into like a being that you can recognize and think about?
Right. But there's kind of no denying, at least from a recognizable, if you had to like look, how do you quantify it? How do you measure it? There's no denying that evil takes place, like you could come up with any number of massacres throughout history, and you say that's an evil act.
There's no question.
Right. So evil is a thing that's real.
If there's good, there's evil.
Right.
Yeah.
And then there have been many, many things that people have done. You're like, wow, good exists in the world. There is still good. So we know both those things are real things. We just don't know what's the root of them all. And are there really angels and demons, or are those the scapegoats for this bizarre dance of good and evil that just exists in the world?
Mm-hmm. Well, if it weren't, for Adam and Eve eating the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, there wouldn't be any perception of good and evil. It'd just be true or false. Which is the reason that Adam and Eve were expelled from the garden, because in the beginning, it was they were living in a world of either truth or falsehood.
You're right.
And after eating the fruit of the difference between good and evil, they became opinionated. Oh, that's good, I like it. That's bad, I don't like it. But the issue of true or false got became muddled.
Yeah.
And they no longer were fit inhabitants of the Garden of Eden, of paradise.
What's your take on Lilith?
Well, Lilith. Well, there's no mention of her in the Bible per se, but there's a lot of mention of her in the rabbinic literature that sprung up after the Bible. Yeah. The story is that I think after Cain killed Abel, that Adam. No. Was it that after that? I think it was after Adam and Eve were expelled from the garden. That they stopped having sex. So Adam, then was just sleeping, with Lilith, and they spawned innumerable demons as a result of their relationship. Yeah, and after a while, Adam and Eve, reconciled, and they got the things together again. Yeah. But Lilith, plays a role in the understanding of evil in the world, like it's the result of the spawn of Lilith.
What do you think Lilith was originally? If it was a thing?
Yeah. I don't know. Well, that's called, midrash. It's the explication of the Bible, by the rabbis. So it's what's called extra biblical. Yeah, and I've only looked into extra biblical stuff to a certain extent.
What's the source of that stuff?
The imagination, and I think the surrounding environment, societies, culture, influenced by the Greeks, the Sumerians, the Akkadians, the Hittites. There's a lot of accumulation of other cultures onto interpreting the stories that occur in the text. A lot of fanciful things and entertaining things, like, for example, Lilith is the source of the demonic entities out there.
Yeah, I found out about Lilith like 6 months ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'd never even heard about it. Do you remember when we found out about Lilith? Somebody brought it up on a show, right?
Yeah, who brought it up, I'm wondering.
I don't remember, but I was like, what? Who's Lilith?
Yeah, was it Jordan Peterson?
It could have been.
Yeah, but
very
because
possibly.
He's a keen student of the Bible.
Very possibly.
Yeah.
I do not remember, though. But I remember thinking, like, wow. Like, and then the original story. Like, so when you're talking about the biblical translations of the Adam and Eve story that we're all accustomed to, it's all a watered down sort of, or a strange translated version of the ancient Hebrew. But you've read the actual ancient Hebrew version of it. Like, what did you get out of it? Like, what did you...
Well, most of the translations of the Hebrew Bible are quite good. Like, the King James Version, it's, very accurate. Yeah, it's a bit, stilted.
Is anything missing in the translation from when you read it in ancient Hebrew, or do you think it's pretty clear?
It's, fairly one-to-one correspondence between the Hebrew words and the English translation. Certain things are interpreted through a Christian lens because the Christians wrote the King James Bible translation.
Right.
Yeah. But the words and the grammar and the narratives, they're pretty much accurate. Yeah. They spent a lot of time working on painstaking, translations. So, there was a responsibility, to do it accurately.
Imagine that story, like trying to pass that one down for 1,000 years.
Yeah.
So there was only two people, and then there was an apple.
Right.
And a snake talked Eve into eating that apple, and everything got fucked.
Yeah. It's a very strange story, isn't it?
Very strange story. What do you think it really was all about?
I think there were two people named Adam and Eve.
For real?
As if they were real.
What do you mean by that?
Well, if you imagine that there was an Adam and Eve and you visualize the garden they were in and the snake and their interactions, there you have it.
So you think the biblical interpretation is a literal recalling of actual events that took place?
No.
No.
I don't think that. Well, it's like if you smoke DMT and you enter into this world, it's true, it's overwhelmingly convincing, it's got its own, laws, its own system, things are regular, like certain things happen, certain interactions take place. Yeah, and you're there. You're convinced it's real, and you interact with it to the best of your ability. So I think that's the case with the narratives in the text. It's not. It isn't a matter of interpreting what they mean, as much as understanding what happened.
Boy, that's obscure. So it's not interpreting what they mean, but understanding what happened.
Yeah, what did the snake say to Eve?
So a snake really talked to Eve, though.
It was as if a snake talked to Eve.
As if.
Yeah.
So perhaps a psychedelic experience, perhaps an altered state of consciousness.
No, I think it was a case of a woman standing near a tree and a snake coming up to her and saying certain things, and they have a conversation.
For real.
As if it were real. Well, the stories have been told so many times.
Right, that's the problem.
And, they seem... Well, if you...
Seems like they're blaming everything on Eve, too, which is like a little suspect. I like to hear her side of it.
Well, the one who got punished without even having a chance to explain himself was the snake. So God asks Adam what happened, and he asks Eve what happened, and he just lays it on the snake.
Right.
Yeah.
And the snake's like, I didn't tell her anything. I can't even talk. This lady wanted to eat that apple, and she blamed me.
Well, back then, snakes could talk. Or in that world, snakes talk.
How so?
Well, they were the wisest of all the animals in the garden. So, they could speak.
Right, but you speak of these things as if, like we're talking about when you go to the zoo, the monkeys swing from the vines, it's normal. Snakes talk.
Well, it's a bit of a paradox. Like if you...
Let me ask you this.
So if you treat those stories as if they were real, you're opening yourself up to this universe of Adam and Eve were in the garden. Then they had Cain and Abel. Cain killed Abel. Then Cain had children, and his children begot the 70 nations. And then there was a flood because mankind was bad. Noah and his family survived. They all spoke one language afterwards. There was on a tower. There was Nimrod, there was Abraham, there was Isaac and Jacob. So it's this world which seems to be quite coherent, quite consistent. It all ties together. It's quite consistent from book to book, from narrative to narrative. It is a different way of looking at the Bible. It isn't dogma like you have to do this or you have to do that. Or it isn't like a Jungian archetype or a psychodynamic, wish fulfillment. It's this world that that is articulated, spelled out in a very ancient, very influential text.
So, is it also possible that something completely different took place, but that over time and over a oral tradition of who knows how many hundreds of years before they actually wrote it down, and then writing it down, that you're getting a version of the actual event that's very different than what really took place, but you think about it like the version in the scripture. And if you think about it in the version of the scripture, are you thinking about it like as if this was an event as recorded, or are you thinking this is a representation of an archetype or some sort of moment in human history that they're trying to recollect and pass down?
Well, if you
that makes
consider,
any
yeah, kind of, yeah. Well, if you consider the text to be prophetically received, prophecy is communication between the divine and man, and the text was prophetically received. In fact, Philo of Alexandria, one of Terence McKenna's heroes, used to say, the most accurate historians were the prophets. because they heard it, directly, from the initiator of the event, the witness of the event, the one who could understand the event in the huge context. So it's a prophetically received text, which means it contains information received from a spiritual sort of level, which you would think is a universal field of sorts.
How much have you ever paid attention, if at all, to any of that ancient Sumerian stuff, like the Anunnaki and...
Some. Yeah, I watched this really great documentary a few years back. Yeah, but I wouldn't consider myself as knowing much about it.
Right. That, to me, is one of the weirder origin stories.
Yeah. So what is that origin story? On my recall, it's quite fascinating, but not the details.
Well, there's multiple versions of it. First of all, the story of this, the fantastic story, is told by Zecharia Sitchin. So Zecharia Sitchin, who wrote The 12th Planet, and he wrote several other books. He was a biblical scholar and a linguist, and he spent a lot of time studying the ancient Sumerian text, the cuneiform. And what he believes is that it tells a story of an ancient relationship between a race of beings on a far distant planet that's in an elliptical orbit, and it comes near Earth every 3,600 years, and that they had engineered human beings out of lower primates. They had accelerated our evolution, and that all of what we know about the cosmos, all of what we know about, they have these detailed, I don't see the ancient tablets that have a detailed map of the solar system from 6,000 years ago.
Right, okay.
They have the sun in the center and all the moon, and they have these really enormous beings. And these enormous beings were supposed to be these things called the Anunnaki.
Okay.
And the literal translation is those from heaven to earth came.
Uh-huh.
It's one of the weirder, if you love a great science fiction version of the origin story of humans, it's the most fun one.
Yeah, it brings to mind the sons of God, the B'nai Elohim, which occur in the story of the flood and Noah.
The Nephilim, too.
Yeah, the Nephilim, the Rephaim, they were huge. They were giants.
Yes, yeah.
Men of renown.
Yeah.
And they intermarried, or they had sex with the daughters of man, and from them came a race.
Yeah.
So that story is interpreted or perceived through the lens of the Hebrew Bible too.
Really?
Yeah. Well, that is a story in the text. Before the flood, is the B'nai Elohim. Come down to earth. They have intercourse with, the daughters of man, and out of those relationships, comes this, race of giants.
That's the most fun one.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Well, they all got swept away in the flood. So that's an interesting, turn of events.
Well, if you interpret the flood as the Younger Dryas impact theory, which created the flood, which lines up.
Right. That does line up.
Yeah. It lines up time-wise, lines up with how it would go down. Yeah. Just no evidence of giants. That's the only thing we're missing. If they found some giants.
Well, in the meantime, you can assume that the giants were real and understand their origin, what they were like, what they did, why they did it, what the results were.